Hey, welcome back to the Christian Music Industry Podcast. I'm your host and your friend in the Christian music industry, Wisdom Moon, and thanks for joining us. Today, I am reunited with a friend that I haven't talked to in a long time, and we'll have to share the story, but I'm joined by Daniel Bashta. Welcome, Daniel.
What's up, my man? My long-lost brother. Reunited at last.
Yes. So Daniel, many of you may know him by his songs that are being sung all over the world. And his songs have been recorded by folks like Newsboys, Third Day, Crowder, Passion, Jesus Culture, Bethel Music. And he's written anthems like a Lion, God's Not Dead. There's a whole movie about that. Relevant Magazine has said that Bashta's music is simultaneously organic and arena ready, filled with both intimacy and soaring cries to God. So, Daniel, I am really happy to see you again. But last time I interviewed you was probably like over 10 years ago, I feel like.
Wow, man, a lot of life has happened. Actually, I would say a lot of lifetimes have happened in the last 10 years.
Yeah. So, funny story, Jake Smith from Destiny Worship Music was on our podcast just a couple of episodes ago. And Jake mentioned to me that they were going to have you out at their church in Destin, Florida. And I was like, oh, Daniel Bashta, what? And then when we were doing a marketing meeting with Jake, you were there on the call.
I don't even think he told you I was coming, huh? Were you?
No.
You like, what?
He just like tilted his laptop. He was like, here's Daniel.
Well, he could have given me a heads up, maybe.
No, it was fun. So, yeah, obviously a lot has happened since I interviewed you. Yeah, in a whole different life, different podcast and all of that. So maybe you could update us a little bit on, where you're at with your life currently. Where do you live? What do you do nowadays?
Yeah, dude, let's jump in. I don't know. We can do the catch up and then dive in. So I'm in Atlanta. Love Atlanta, and man, 10 years is a long time. I mean, it's a lot. Like so much has happened in my life in the last 10 years. Like I'm like trying to decide where we should start. I mean, but so I've got 4 kids, and let's see. We first met at Integrity Music years and years ago. After that, I was at Bethel Music for about 6 years, and then I took about a 2.5, 3 years, kind of just getting off the grid completely. So 3 years of that, and then during that time, COVID happened, and during that time, some amazing friends of mine started a thing called Maverick City, and so honestly, for this year, 2022, right? Is that where we are? Yeah, 2022. It's kind of my first year of kind of getting back humbly on a small pony now. I used to think I rode a stallion, or maybe at one point I thought I rode a dragon, and but yeah. So now this year we kind of joined forces. Been joining forces with Mav, and it's been amazing to see what's happened with them, and a lot in between. So we can jump right into it, and
wow. So I'm curious. You said you went off the grid for 2 to 3 years. Yeah. So what does that mean, and what led you to do that?
Yeah. So I grew up in the church my whole life, playing music my whole life. In my early 20s, I was a part of. By the way, I just turned 40 this year too, so I'm officially like a veteran. Like I am not a new kid on the block anymore. Old kid on the block. I am no longer the fresh blood gunslinger. I'm just sitting in my rocking chair smoking my pipe now. You know, there's new blood out there and young blood,
Yeah.
and I think it's amazing. And I remember when I was the young blood out there, the new
Mm,
gunslinger. I was early 20s. I was a part of a church plant in Birmingham, Alabama. This church exploded, massive mega church. And
mm,
it's just funny how in this kind of past decade, pre the last time you and I talked, but early 20s.
yeah.
So let's say you and I talked in my early 30s. Nobody in the evangelical church world, because that's the world that I was in, uh nobody was talking about mental health. Nobody was
Mm,
talking about boundaries. No one was
yeah.
talking of um triggers. No one was
Mm,
talking therapy. No one was talking
yeah.
recovery. That wasn't the thing. Everything was about submitting to authority. Everything was about the hustle. Everything was about, oh no, we work now and we rest in heaven. Everything was
Mm,
about,
yeah.
you know, well, we're winning souls. We don't have time to think about our own souls. We can do that later.
Mm,
And so for me, in my early 20s, it was amazing because I was a part of this um, container and brand that truly did explode. I mean, I don't know
mm,
how many people they have now. Let's just say they have 100,000 people in their brand now.
yeah.
And so planning churches, planning campuses, starting satellites, starting worship schools, starting internships, building. It was all just the hustle, the hustle, the hustle. And I mean, at one point in my early 20s, just in like church services, I was doing a Tuesday night, 2 Wednesday night services, a Thursday night service, 2 Saturday night services, and 4 Sunday services. That was
Whew.
just the services. And then I was also in the office like all
Wow.
day. There's no such thing. No one was looking out. It's like, hey, this is
Mm,
which is great. Like I think early 20s, like honestly, um, there I experienced a lot of it's like this new, now they're classifying it as spiritual trauma.
mm,
But so in my early 20s, I experienced a lot of like uh lessons in learning how to build a corporation, how to run a department, how to run a budget, how to be in front of people. And so that was an
yeah.
amazing thing that
Mm,
I learned a incredible work ethic too, how to get things done. Back in the day, no was not an option. It was, everyone was a yes man, and if you didn't say yes, then
mm,
the structure would find someone who would. Um,
yeah.
and so for what I'm learning now in where I am in life now, like everything kind of serves its purpose for time, right? And
Mm,
so for me, that being a part of this container and brand, for me in the beginning, it was so exciting, and I was honored to be a part of it. Early 20s, I mean, it was just massive growth and massive,
yeah.
fastest growing church in America, all these different highlights. And
Mm,
so that was beautiful. It served its time, but at the same time, in my early 20s, I also started this. I had never really known rejection before, or I had never known spiritual abuse before, or I had never known the kind of this the weight of basically like you're like just not enough,
mm,
and no one at the time was looking out for the creative and the artist soul. Everybody was
yeah.
just, it was just like, do more, do more, do more, do more. What are you accomplishing? Prove yourself, work go up the ladder, and you'll create a bigger platform. And the more that you serve the platform, the more the platform will serve you, and all these things, right?
Wow.
And yeah, it was I mean, I I remember in early 20s. And here's also the other thing that I've learned now is you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So there's grace for all of us, you know.
Yeah.
The pastor that was in charge of this corporation and brand and church, you know, it's funny now because he was younger than I am now, you know. So when he
Oh,
started the
wow.
church, and I look back to the pressure and just the rat race, and there's all, you know, there's the doing good, you know, and also there's always a pushback, and I guess that's why they say like don't grow weary in doing good, right?
Mm.
And so yeah, it's like I remember the first time when it's just like all of a sudden me being creative and unique and raw and me, it all of a sudden was not serving the brand and the container
Mm.
the way that I was just used to. I've always
Yeah.
done worship, I've always done music, I've always been a part of different brands and leading worship and being in front of people and missions work and traveling. And it was the first time that like I basically was saying like you're just not enough, you know. I need you to be something else. And it just kind of
Mm.
created like more, the more that I tried, the more that I tried to get affirmation from this leader, the more that I tried to do more, the more that I tried to be someone else and something else, just the more and more of my
Mm.
soul was just losing it, and I was just growing weary. And I mean, I remember too, like early 20s, um I was traveling some and writing some, and all my band guys were the main band for like the main campus of this church, and
Mm.
we had started going our separate ways. And I remember that this pastor told some people in the church, it's like Daniel is in direct rebellion and disobedience against me, and nothing
Oh, wow.
that he does, God's going to bless, you know? And
Whoa.
it was wild. Like I didn't know what to do. Like, and so that was kind of like my early 20s. Like, and then for
Wow.
10 years of 20s to 30s, it was okay. I was at this church for 6 years. I got married. I met my wife at the church, so that's amazing.
Mm.
And the day that we came home from our honeymoon, she was on staff at the church full time as well, and we both resigned, and we're just like, hey,
Mm.
let's just start a new chapter. You know, like we can
Mm.
stay in this environment forever and get comfortable and make more money and be a part of bigger things and platforms, and everybody be like, wow, look at what they're a part of. Or be like, hey, what
Mm.
if Spirit is saying right now, like it's time to follow Spirit into something new. So
Mm.
that kind of like led us to our early 30s. Got involved with Jesus culture, wrote that song God's Not Dead Like a Lion. All of a sudden things, you know, in the music world are happening, and
Mm.
um record deals. Yeah, got my first record deal, publishing deal. And 30s was just about the hustle, man. Like from
Mm.
30 to 37, I guess. Had 4 kids, traveled,
Mm.
toured, wrote songs, started nonprofits, started for profits, made records, produced, did all the things to build my kingdom, um,
Mm.
and to prove uh, that I was special, like that
Mm.
and it took
Wow.
a good from 30 to 37. It took a lot of I saw a lot of success. I made a lot of money. I
Mm.
was the young blood. I things were
Mm.
happening as a songwriter. Things were happening with songs that were things that people wait their whole lifetimes just to try to have all the things connect that make a song, whatever you want to say, successful or whatever. And all that time is just um, because my foundation in the beginning, in my early 20s, was all about doing and doing, and no one
Mm.
was looking out for this hole in my soul that I kept trying to fill. All in that process, I became an awesome alcoholic, and
Oh wow.
I I found such an escape with alcohol and drinking, and
Mm.
I was able to escape it all. It made me really creative. It was just,
Mm.
it was something that I lost complete control and all power um
Mm.
to the sickness. And so that was about 37. And okay, so I'll hit pause there and we'll jump in. I'll stop. What thoughts thoughts?
Wow. Jeez. Yeah, that you've gone through a lot. And yeah, I mean, thanks for first of all just being very open and vulnerable
Yeah.
about that,
Yeah.
because especially in the church world, I think it's hard, and I think it's becoming more and more
Yeah.
acceptable to be open and honest about struggles and just the stuff that we
Yeah.
go through and the hurts
Yeah.
like church hurts and things like that. So especially for you being somebody that is in the public arena, like people know who you are, and I think when you have like a public platform and a public name, it's harder to be honest about things that you're going through or have gone
Yeah.
through, because you go, well, what if me sharing that closes
Yeah.
doors for
Yeah.
opportunities, So I just really want to, say thanks for sharing that, because I know there's people out there struggling with the same stuff and that need to hear you talk about it,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm in my recovery and healing process. I'm learning that um life is a teacher, and
Mm.
for so long I I couldn't listen, and for so long I was so
Mm.
infected with um this poison of proving myself, of building things and creating things to show how important I am. And in all in the process, I was destroying me. I was destroying my soul. I was destroying my relationship with my wife. I was destroying my relationship with my kids. I was destroying the
Mm.
relationship of people that I was working with professionally. Uh, I just didn't care anymore. It got so bad
Wow.
in, um, especially about 2018. I just stopped caring. I was bored. I was just so bored with doing the same things. Like, it's just, I
Mm.
mean, I realized though that the more that I drank, the more delusional I was, and the more that I felt like I was improving on the delusion of I'm important and I'm special. And
Wow.
really, I was just delusional, and I was sick, and I was not at, I had really close friends, and I mean, honestly, I think that's what I'm learning in creative worlds. Like there's always a good and a bad to everything, right? And I don't think like what I'm learning now is like I don't think the good and the bad are just like the absolutes. I'm just learning that
Mm.
there's wisdom, obviously you, and there's wisdom and spirit on one side that is saying like, hey, we're not classifying this as good and evil. We're just saying like, hey, there's choices that you can make, and depending on what choices you make, there's always going to be a consequence and responsibility to that choice,
Yeah.
um, and for me just the consequences of just being so unhealthy and being so
Mm.
selfish and fueling my ego and just trying to prove all the things that how special I thought I was, it it was taking me away from all the things that I cared most about, and I was just too blind.
Mm.
And it got to the point that I was just like, I'm done. Like
Wow.
I'm done. I don't want to be married anymore. I
Wow.
don't. And the funny thing about all of it too is like, it was never like, I never had like a question about God. Like, honestly, like
Mm.
for like during my spiraling the last few years of my 30s, um it was always like I always knew that God was present with me. And
Mm.
which is wild, like to know that like even in my sickness and even in my addiction, that God was still so loving and present with me. And I mean,
Wow.
there's like, that's the thing. Like sickness will, I know, we could even call it sin, like the separation. I grew up too in church,
Yeah.
and I hated the word sin. But now it's like, no, sin is
Mm.
something that's a separation. And in my own sin, it was starting to separate me from so many things that were me. Like I wanted to pretend I was a victim the whole time. And
Wow.
in AA, and they have this great like analogy. And it's like, you live your whole life, and I love AA because they cuss a lot in AA, so I won't cuss. But you live your whole life in this victim mentality of like, F you, F you, F you. And
Mm.
one day you wake up and you're like, oh, me, like I'm responsible for this. I'm the problem
Mm.
here. Like I've pointed my finger for so long. I was like, oh, in my early 20s, this happened to me. And that I experienced this trauma over
Mm.
here. And for so long, it was like, I was pointing my fingers at all the things that my insecurities, my fears, my pride, my ego. I was just like, it's these things, instead of
Mm.
actually saying like, oh no, like, I'm responsible to uh you
Yeah.
to get healthy. And um so it just got to a point that I was just like, I lost power to it. I kind of was like, okay, I'm gonna do this Hail Mary. And there's this
Mm.
organization in Nashville called Onsite, and
Oh yeah.
it's a wonderful, wonderful place. Miles is doing incredible things with all, just wonderful people. And for me, it was kind of like, hey, I'm going to do this just so I can show everyone. Like I've done years and years of therapy. That didn't help. I'm going to do
Mm.
on-site just to show everyone that I was willing to seek out help. But there's no way that this
Mm.
is going to do anything. But at least my ego and pride was telling me like, this will help point the fingers elsewhere instead of pointing the fingers at me.
Mm. Wow.
Um, so that's honestly, that's where my journey of sobriety began. And that was February 6th of 2019. And um, in AA, they talk about higher power. And they say that sometimes higher power is just a doorknob, just to get you to go
Mm.
through the door. And at that moment, I was in my therapy, and I had this wild, I call it like a Ebenezer Scrooge type moment,
Mm.
where I like I it was the most strange, wild thing. But I had this vision of myself and almost like Daniel past, Daniel present, and Daniel future. And
Mm.
when I saw Daniel Future, I did not have a wife. I did not have a family.
Wow.
It was this road that was taking me to a place that I had no control over. And
Mm.
I saw my kids, especially I saw my oldest son, Phoenix. And uh, I had this amazing spiritual awakening
Mm.
at this place. And it's like it's like God just gave me this massive hug and was just saying like, hey, it's okay. And by the way, you are enough. And
Wow.
I literally started sobbing, like heaving and crying in my therapy session. And it was wild. And I even before I left for Nashville, I told my wife, I was like, listen, I don't know if I'm coming home. Um,
Mm,
there's no way that this place is going to fix me. Um, and
mm,
uh, there's no outside communication. There's no devices or cell phones or anything. So for a week, my wife had no clue what was going on. And
yeah.
we're both in two different worlds. She was in this paranoid, like, what is going to happen? Is he going to come home?
Mm,
And I
yeah.
was in this spiritual awakening space.
Mm,
And that started this incredible journey for me of becoming a part of AA and 12 steps. And in Onsite, they had this phrase that says, trust the process.
mm,
And all of a sudden for me, it's like uh, it became this kind of mantra for me. It's like, trust the process. Like, for so long, I thought I could trust myself, and I realized that I actually can't trust myself. Like, my
yeah.
brain is delusional. My ego is a liar.
Mm,
And all of a sudden, this phrase of like, trust the process started to open up my eyes. And all of a sudden, I was willing to take the first step of saying, okay, my name's Daniel, I'm an alcoholic. And this phrase of like, I am powerless over this thing. I'm still not special. Like, even the idea of like, oh, I'm an alcoholic, look how special I am. Like, woe is me type. I'm a victim. All these things happen. It's like, no, no, no. It's like, actually in AA, it's like it's one of the only fellowships you can be in that there's no such thing as a victim. It's,
mm,
they say that the sickness is not my fault, but the recovery is 100% my responsibility. And
mm,
uh, that was something that all of a sudden, as I begin to work the first step of surrender, all of a sudden, like my spiritual climate and my spiritual energy and spirit was speaking. And all of a sudden, I don't know, it's just like I was finding my soul again and my heart again,
mm.
and I was open to it.
Wow. That, man, I'm just like, captivated by your story. And there's a couple of times I'm like, this is the first time I'm about to cry
Wow.
on this
Wow.
podcast. Because, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
powerful, that God can use this hopeless situation. And, even when you're like, well, this isn't even going to help, you're
Yeah.
just like, I'm just going to do it just to get people off my
Yeah.
back. But God used that in a powerful way, and man, that's just amazing. And yeah, I mean, I think just gives so much hope
Mhm.
to people that may be hearing this, that may be struggling with whatever kind of addiction and stronghold that they might have in their life. And yeah, I mean, just your story unfolding is a testimony of like God's grace, but also a testimony of like how it can destroy your
Yeah.
life, when you just like give into
Yeah.
something. And it's so subtle too. Like, it's not like overnight you're just like completely surrendering your life to this addiction.
Yeah.
It's just happens day at a time, one thing at a
Yeah.
time. And yeah, just the fact that you were able to get help and get the right kind of help to help you like get back on track. Because I mean, yeah, just to hear that like you're in this place now where you're able to be I guess, in relationship with your family and also like be a productive human being.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild because Richard Rohr talks about, he's like, no one wants to go through it, right? We as
Mm-hmm.
humans will do everything possible to go around it, to sidestep it, to go underneath it, to try to fly above it, but nobody wants to go through it. And
Yeah.
even if like we start the process of going through it, most of us will always return to that which we always have known because it's comfortable, even though we know
Mm.
it's going to kill us, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing for having, and and that's the thing. Like I was talking to a friend once, um, and she's like, "How are you doing?" And I was like, "Man, it's hard work." And she looked at me. She's like, "Yeah, uh, that's what it is. It's hard work, and there's not many people that are willing to do the hard work.
Wow.
Most of us are willing to work hard, right,
Yeah.
at being creative and working on projects, and to point to like, look what I'm doing, look what I'm doing. And that was one of the mantras at Onsite. It was, you are a human being, not a human doing.
Mm.
And so for me, it's like I had to start that first step of surrender, of like, hey, I'm just powerless over this thing.
Mm.
And another Richard Rohr thing is he talks about how there's always a death before a death, you know? And
Mm.
yeah, I grew up in the charismatic world my whole life as a young age, and everything was always, even the songs that I wrote in my early 20s were all about like miracles and
Mm.
supernatural and all these things. Like everyone loves to talk about the miracle, right? It's like, oh, just
Yeah.
we're looking for a breakthrough. We're trusting God for the miracle. Man, if we can just get that miracle. And
Mm.
I think what this process of and this road of recovery has done for me is that like everybody just wants the miracle, like to just like to show up. Like they want it to be like a
Mm.
snap your fingers type thing. Like, look, I got this miracle. And growing up, I saw
Yeah.
miracles happen my whole life. I saw instant supernatural things happen that I could
Mm.
not explain, but I saw them, with my own eyes.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, it was such a psychological shift of thinking, because like, oh, here I am thinking my whole life I'm doing good to build the kingdom of God, and honestly, I was probably just trying to, reality was just trying to build my own kingdom. Um,
Mm.
and I had the sickness, and it's just like, oh, let me just pray for a miracle, and then I'll get better. And what I've realized now is like, no, uh, that's that's not going to happen for most of us, And
Mm.
in my experience of my own journey, it's I had to be willing to do the hard work. And so for me, I learned such a difference of just praying for a miracle. Whereas, the twist has been accepting the fact that the miracle is step one. I'm
Mm.
powerless over this, and I surrender. And the miracle for me has been the commitment to doing the work and trusting the process, and to be
Yeah.
in this um, new place of recovery and healing.
Mm.
And that's the wild thing. It's like, okay, great. Now I'm, February 6th, I'm going on 3.5 years now of sobriety.
That's awesome.
So I went completely off the grid. I stopped social media. I we sold our house in the city. We were like, okay, let's just start over.
Mm.
So we were being very proactive and saying like, hey, this is a reset. I came home from on-site speaking a whole new language, and then my wife
Wow.
went to on-site, and
Oh
she had
wow.
her own experience at on-site. And we're like, okay, great, look, we're doing the work, we're trusting the process, we're in recovery as a
Yeah.
family in partnership, we're resetting, recentering, we're being proactive in our recovery and therapy.
Mm.
And then like Roy says, there's always a death before a death. And it gets to this point of it all kind of my selfishness and all my ego and pride and the things that, like, decisions that I made that have their consequence responsibility caught up to me, and it caught up to my family. And then
Mm.
it's like my wife tells me, she's like, I want a divorce. And then
Mm.
COVID happens. And then, like, all of a sudden the world is
Wow.
literally falling apart for
Yeah.
everyone. And in my experience of my own world, it's like, wait, my wife is telling me she wants a divorce. Uh, I'm in this path of recovery. Like, wait, I thought we were in this healing process,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
realizing that there's always more, like, and that death
Mm.
before death, like, oh, I see what's happening here. Like, there's still more that I need to surrender to. There's still more
Mm.
that God and higher power are trying to show me, for me to relinquish control of all the things I've tried to control my whole life, to
Mm.
maneuver, to be in charge,
Yeah.
to be, oh, I'm a man, look at me, and um yeah, so for it was a wild thing to go from right before the world starts ending for everyone, right? COVID world. Then my world's ending. My wife's telling me she wants a divorce. All of a sudden we're in a separation, and it's such a wild thing
Mm.
of trying to figure out what's next, but at the same time still trusting the process, still being willing to do the work, and
Mm.
um still knowing, like, hey, my sobriety is my responsibility, so still taking that serious and trusting higher power and God to say, okay, no matter what happens, I'm not going to let fear and scarcity and insecurity control me and make me delusional of what's next. Like, I know
Mm.
everything will be okay. It may look different. Everything may change, but I trust the process, and I trust God, and I know He hasn't brought me thus far, to just abandon me as I'm going
Yeah.
through this another death in my cycle.
Wow.
And so that's the thing. It's like I was praying for a miracle, but at the same time, it's just I was like I know we can't just pray for a miracle. Like, I'm asking higher power to give me another chance for my marriage and
Mm.
for my family, so that I can have the chance to be a better version of myself as a partner and a better version of myself as a dad. And we just celebrated Father's Day yesterday, right?
Mm.
And what everything's teaching me now is that we can either let fear be the driver of the ship, or we can just become aware and accept things, and then be willing to make a change. And fear is going to always be a voice. In my experience of it, fear is always going to be a voice. But for me, I just now know that fear is in the back seat, and it's not. I'm not allowing. I'm
Mm.
not going to let it drive the ship anymore. And
Yeah.
all that happened is just my wife. We had the miracle. My wife and I. We were like, hey, can we try again? Are we both willing to try
Mm.
again? So we're a year into lots of therapy and recovery for our marriage, and
Mm.
as a family, for kids or for kids. And it's what it's all shown me is that there's just so much more for me to discover. The beautiful thing about AA is, like, they talk about it like, hey, we're going to address the alcohol thing, because it's only the first step
Mm.
that talks about alcoholism and alcohol.
Oh,
And
wow.
the rest of it is like, it's going to be like an onion, unpeeling an onion, and layers and layers and layers are going to happen. And what
Wow.
I'm discovering in my recovery is that the more that I'm committed to healing and recovering in my life and being in the program, the more I'm discovering more about myself and the psychological side and the spiritual side and the sexual side, and
Mm.
do lots of therapy, and have lots of spiritual advisors in my life, and lots of wonderful, wonderful brothers and close friends that are in my life. And it's just like, it's wild to look back and be like, they talk, in AA, they talk about some days looks like 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
Mm.
And I remember my first AA meeting that I went to, and people were thanking alcohol. Like, they're like, hey, I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful for what alcohol is teaching me. And I had no clue. I was like,
Wow.
what are you talking about? I don't want to be here. I am not grateful. I miss drinking. I feel like an alien. Everything is
Mm.
falling apart in my life. It's supposed to be getting better. What is happening here? And it's really brilliant and beautiful to see 3.5 years into this new journey of like, oh, gratitude is a beautiful thing. And in AA,
Mm.
we jokes like gratitude is the best attitude. I'm grateful, not
Mm.
hateful. Like, there's so many zingers in AA, and I really am. I'm grateful that my wife and I are both willing to practice doing the work. We're putting everything that we're
Mm.
learning to practice, saying like, hey, we're committed to this. I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but that's okay, because the program has taught me that I don't have to worry about tomorrow. Like, give me today my daily bread. And so for today,
Mm.
I know that I'm okay. For today, I surrender. And for today,
Mm.
I'm going to do my best to not be resentful. And I'm going to do my best to take personal inventory in my own life so that I could be a better partner, a better husband, a better father.
Yeah. And yeah, as you were talking about miracles, and sometimes, there's hard work before the
Yeah.
miracle comes. I was thinking about how Jesus fed the 5,000, but he took, the fish and the loaves from this little boy whose mom probably had to cook the fish and the loaves at home. They have to catch the fish,
Yeah.
and then they have to like go through the process of cooking all that stuff before he brought it to
Yeah.
Jesus. To listen to Jesus, and then Jesus took that, all the work that they had put into it, and then did a miracle with it. So I think it's a really a powerful reminder that like God uses the hard stuff too. Like, we sometimes have to go through the hard stuff. We can't just like try to skip over it, skip over the
Yeah.
therapy, skip over, the guidance and the counseling that we may need in our lives, because all of us have baggage and different things that we may need to, just get healing from and be able to be, set free from that.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
man,
That's
thanks so
Yeah, it's
much.
like, think about the children of Israel, like wandering in the desert, for 40 years.
Yeah.
Like I said, like, life is a teacher. Like, it
Yeah.
will keep offering beautiful chapters. It's like, okay, are you ready to learn yet? Are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? How about now? How about now? And
Yeah.
I think that's the beautiful thing about God, higher power, and spirit, is that it'll let us wander for a while, and still love
Mm.
us all the whole time. And I heard someone said,
Yeah.
a friend said once, like, um, spirit should never follow form. Form should always follow spirit,
Mm.
And it's like, in this process of like, of healing and trusting process and doing the work and asking questions. Also realizing too, like, there are some questions that I have that may never have an answer for, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Like, because the beauty is like, today, like, today's a teacher, and God is good always, and God is
Mm.
patient and kind, and out of that kindness, that's the offering of, are you ready yet? Are you ready yet? There's
Mm.
repentance here today, if you're willing to surrender and
Mm.
see that your
Yeah.
ego is literally killing you, and
Yeah.
are you ready to repent? And so that's the beauty. It's like
Mm.
surrender, repentance, all of it just is showing me, and what I'm experiencing is just such acceptance from God, and And the whole time, like realizing like, oh no, like I've been here the whole time. There's never been a question of like, well, God,
Mm,
where have you been? Like I've never had that.
yeah.
I've always known like literally right here. Like I'm with you. I'm with you. You know, Emmanuel
Mm,
with us. And that's what I'm learning. It's like kindness is always going to offer new ways and better ways, and just
yeah.
and it takes the time it takes, right? We don't know
Yeah.
what we don't know. It takes the time it takes, and God is so kind, and He'll keep offering us. He'll let us wander and let us wander, and
Yeah.
those of us that are willing to take the first step to say, hey, things have gone awry here. For me,
Mm,
that's every day is a beautiful day now. Like, and
mm,
I'm learning how to be content. I'm learning how to be grateful. I'm learning how to let go of resentment. I'm learning to let go of ego. I'm learning how to do shadow work. Just say like, hey,
mm,
there's we're not there yet, but the beautiful thing is that like I don't ever want to arrive anymore. You know, like I'm
yeah.
loving this process of becoming, you know, and
Yeah. Mm,
that's the beautiful thing. I'm starting to get lots of phone calls from other artists and creatives of like, hey, going things have gone awry in my life. Like teach me,
mm,
like what are some steps? And so those are just practical things. Onsite is an amazing program. Any 12 step is an amazing program. There's 12 step programs for anything, any plan of recovery. Some books that are amazing. An amazing book on 12 steps is Richard Rohr, Breathing Underwater, and he takes the parallel of the 12 steps and then also breaks them down into spiritual living. So that when
mm,
I read that, really opened my eyes and gave me a new lens for the 12 steps and spirituality. Um, and then there's another book called We Are the Luckiest. That's an amazing. It's less spiritual, just more a journey about addiction,
mm,
and it's a really beautiful book. So there's lots of resources, therapy, obviously. Like I've become such a more of a like a practical person now. I'm like, hey, that's great. You're
yeah.
talking about your experience and what and those beautiful, but give me some practical steps. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, there's so many resources out there, and I can only be responsible for my own recovery, you know. And everyone has
Mm,
a day that that the day Spirit's trying to teach us all something today, and
yeah.
uh, it's a beautiful day to be alive. There's new mercies every morning. There's so many things every day I wake up that I'm like, oh, I'm just seeing everything through a new lens, and it's exciting.
Mm, yeah. Man. Well, this has been really good and time has flown by. But before I let you go, I would love for you to just give us a quick, I guess, synopsis of your latest project, Odes and Omens, which can be found on any music platform. Tell us about that project and why you
Yeah,
did it.
I mean, so I kind of like in my being off the grid, social media, um, and not really traveling, well, not traveling at all for the last couple of years.
Mm,
So in the process too, we worked on some projects. So I did one worship project called Wave Your Flag. So it's kind of like it was a bunch of songs that I worked on during the pandemic and during
mm,
my beginning journeys of sobriety. Wrote it with awesome friends, a lot of songs with amazing friends. So Wave Your Flags Out is there. Then I really wanted to do just like a hymn little record, just because I kind of,
mm,
some uh, for me, the writing process being sober has changed and morphed so much, and for me hymns are just the most beautiful ancient poetry besides
yeah.
psalms, you know. So it's just like, you know, I wanted to just do a little simple program, so we did this hymns record, little EP called Odes and Omens. My sister and I worked on a kind of side project called Pharaoh. So
Mm,
that fairs was a fun thing that we also worked on during the pandemic, and
Oh,
it's
cool.
called Dead Love Songs. And so all those things. And
Awesome.
but my if you're gonna check out anything, go to Onsite. Check out Onsite, the website, because it's a beautiful place. And if you're not in therapy, everyone should be in therapy. And it's a beautiful space to share of healing. And so, if you're gonna check out anything, go find a therapist. No need to listen to any of my music. It's not gonna help you. Go find a therapist. And bro, I'm so grateful that we reconnected.
Yeah, and while you're driving to your therapist, listen to Daniel's music.
Yes.
Win-win.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much, Daniel, for taking the time to just share your journey. And I really pray that this will help many, many people that maybe, are struggling with this, but nobody even knows about it. So, yeah, appreciate everything that you shared. And we just look forward to what God's going to continue to do in your life.
Carry on, bro. Soldier on.